Welcome to the Crochet Challenge for Warm Up America 2019. Let's get started on the knit hat. The first thing we need to do to knit our hats is estimate how much yarn we'll need for our long tail cast on. What I like to do is take one of my needles and just wrap it around 10 times. I like to work with nice round numbers. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now pinching that off here and knowing I have a little extra down there, this is approximately how much yarn it will take for 10 stitches. We'll need a total of 84, so I'm just going to flip it. So this is about the yarn that I need for 20. Flip it again, 30, again, 40, all the way to 80. And then just to be on the safe side, I like to go a couple more times just to make sure I have enough yarn. If you run out, then you'll have to start all over again. Okay, so I'm estimating I'll need about this much for 84 stitches in my long tail cast on. So from this point, I'm going to just place that on my needle, hold that with my finger. Now you can make a slip knot here and place that on your needle. It's really personal preference. I usually do this and it works out just fine for me. So make sure you steady that loop on your needle, and then you'll gather the yarn in your hand like this. We're going to work with these two fingers, kind of go in the inside of those two loops, and then with these extra fingers, gather them up. So you're sort of making like a diamond shape. Then I'll take my needle, I'll swing it around, catch the loop that's on my thumb, then swing it back, catch the loop that's on my finger, and then I'll release this thumb loop over the tip of the needle. Now there we have 2 stitches cast on our needle. So let's see that once again. Gather your yarn, swing it down, grab the loop on your thumb, swing it back, grab the loop on your index finger, release it over the tip. Swing it down, grab the loop on your thumb, swing it back, grab the loop on your finger, release it over the tip of your finger. So from here we can just count that we have 4 loops on our needle. That means we have 4 stitches cast on. We need a total of 84. Now, once you have your 84 stitches cast on your needle, go ahead and lay them out in front of you like this and arrange the braid so that it's all in the middle. We want to make sure that it's not twisted, and that's the best way to do it. And be sure that you're not knitting with your tail. So go ahead and get that out of the way. You can even trim it down if you want to. All right, from here we're ready to start knitting our first row. This is my working yarn. This is my tail. You'll also need some sort of stitch marker. You can use a ring stitch marker that's specifically for knitting. I use these for crochet as well. They're just locking stitch markers, and they work perfectly fine. As long as it's round and it won't come off of the needle, you can use it. So I'll place that there so I know that this is the beginning of the round, and now I'm ready to join. So our stitch pattern is pretty simple. We're going to work with knits and purls and do a 2x2 rib. So I'll insert my needle knitwise into that first stitch, wrap the yarn, and knit it. Now that should join everything together. So now I have a round instead of just a flat piece. We'll go ahead and knit the next stitch as well. And then we'll purl 2. So to make a purl, you'll pull the yarn in front, insert your needle what we call purlwise, so from back to front in that next stitch, I'll wrap the yarn and purl it off. I'll do that once more, insert my needle purlwise into that next stitch, wrap the yarn, purl. And that's the repeat. I'll pull the yarn in back because the next 2 stitches I want to knit. So I will knit 2. And purl 2. Now you'll just repeat this until you get back to your stitch marker. Now if you've done everything correctly, when you get to the end of your round, your last 2 stitches should be purls. I went ahead and pulled the yarn in back, and I'm ready to continue, so you can pass the stitch marker over, and we'll continue with this repeat. We'll knit the first 2, purl the next 2. Now this is the stitch pattern for most of our hat until we get to some of the crown shaping. We'll have 2 rounds where we'll do a little bit of decreasing, but this is it. We're going to knit 2, purl 2, and for now we have one big repeat coming up. So we're continuing to work in color A in our knit 2, purl 2 pattern until it measures about 3 inches from our cast on edge, or basically down here, right on the bottom. So go ahead and work in this stitch pattern, knit 2, purl 2, until your work measures about 3 inches from the cast on edge. And after that, we'll look at how to do a color transition when we move to color B next. Now, once we get through that first color block, our hat should look something like this, and we're ready to progress to color B. So I've left it here, so I have just 1 stitch to be worked. That is a purl stitch, so I will go ahead and purl this stitch and slide my stitch marker over, and here is where we'll make the color transition. So our first stitch is a knit. We're going to continue with our stitch pattern of knit 2, purl 2, but for this color change, we'll do just one thing different. I will insert my needle knitwise, and rather than yarn over and knit the stitch like normal, I will add in my color B. We're not changing anything with the stitch pattern here. We'll still continue with knit 2 and purl 2, and so that's what I'll do here first. My first stitch is a knit, but I want to get color B ready to go. So grab color B and fold it over, leaving yourself about an 8-inch tail. We want to keep it long enough so that we can weave it in, and then we'll set that aside so we can pick it up in just a moment. Now go ahead and insert your needle knitwise, but instead of yarning over with this color A, we're going to pick up color B. So where we had that folded, we'll place that on our needle and knit it off with the new color. Now, when you're collecting your yarn to start knitting with the new color, be certain that you're grabbing the working yarn and not the tail. I'll go ahead and knit the next stitch and purl again, and knit 2, and just continue on with your stitch pattern. We'll do something special here at the end of the round to help correct a little color jog that we'll see. But first of all, we just need to get through this first round with our new color. Once you reach the end of your row, you'll go ahead and purl your last stitch as normal. We'll pass our stitch marker over, and then before we knit the first stitch, we need to grab the bar of the stitch below. So getting a bit of a closer look here, this V right here is the stitch directly below this one. And I want to grab this bar right here with my opposite needle and then place that on the tip of your needle. Then go ahead and knit both of these together. So we're kind of treating it like a knit two together, only it's not really a stitch. We're just pulling it up, and I'll knit them as if it were one. Now the reason why that stitch is a little loose is because this is my first stitch and my tail there is in the background. Now I'll go ahead and knit the next stitch, purl a couple, then when you're looking at your work like this, we don't see a color jog, or basically a step up or a step down from where we made this color transition. So that's just a little trick when you're knitting stripes in the round to fix that color jog. Super easy, but it makes a really big difference. Now we'll continue with our stitch pattern in color B, so we'll continue working with this color here until our hat measures about 6 inches from our cast on edge. All right, now my hat measures about 6 inches from my cast on edge here. I'm ready to make that final color transition. I have just one more purl to work here. And let's see how to do that one more time. So I'll insert my needle knitwise, and rather than yarn over with my white color, or my color B, I will simply loop my new color around my needle and just hold tight to that. You'll want to hold on to the tail too, and then just pull that through and knit it off. Now, after you finish that first round of the color transition, don't forget to grab the leg of that last white stitch, or your color B stitch, from the row below and place that up on your needle when you get ready to knit your first stitch, and then just knit those two together as if they were one stitch, and that'll correct your color jog. Okay, for now, we need to continue in our knit 2 purl 2 pattern until our hat measures about 8 inches from our cast on edge. So we're adding a couple more inches in color C here, and then we'll start working on some crown shaping next. So this is what my hat looks like now after finishing that next repeat. It's about 8 inches from my cast on edge to where I'm at now, and this is where I will start a little bit of crown shaping. Now don't worry, we're not going to do so much that we need to switch to double pointed needles. Just going to do a few rounds of decreasing, and then we'll do a really simple drawstring bind off. But the purpose of the crown shaping here is to get rid of some of the bulk that'll be created with that drawstring bind off. So when you get to this point, you've got about 2 inches here of color C, and you're ready for the crown shaping. We'll keep track of our row with our stitch marker, so I'll just pass that over, and I'm ready to start shaping. Now the repeat for this row is pretty simple. I've got my next 2 stitches lined up. These would normally be 2 knits. Well, rather than knit each one of them individually, I'm going to knit the 2 together. So you'll insert your needle knitwise into both of those loops and knit it off just as if it were one. So we're decreasing by 1 stitch there. And then we'll purl the next 2. And repeat. Knit 2 together and purl 2. We'll repeat that until we get back to our stitch marker. Now once you finish that, you should end with those 2 purls, and we're ready to move on to the next round. What we'll do for the next 3 rounds is pretty simple. We're not decreasing here. We're going to knit 1, purl 2. So we're still knitting the knits and purling the purls and maintaining that pattern, but we're a couple stitches shorter now, right? So we are just knitting the knit 2 together, and then we're still purling those purls. So do this for a total of 3 more rounds. This one and 2 more, and then we'll pick up with a little bit more shaping after that. Now once you complete those last 3 rounds, your work will look something like this. We're going to do another shaping round or a decreasing round here. So I'll pass my stitch marker over, and the repeat for this round is knit 1, purl 2 together. So then to make that purl 2 together, you'll pull the yarn in forward just like always, and then insert your needle purlwise into those 2 purls or those next 2 stitches. And purl them as if it were 1. And that's the repeat. Knit 1, purl 2 together. We'll repeat that all the way around. Now when you get finished with that round, you will notice that your stitches are stretching just a tiny bit around your circulars. It's still doable at this point. We have just a few more rounds to go, but no more decreasing. So we'll stay this size until we do our drawstring bind off. So we'll pass the stitch marker over, and the repeat for this round as well as the next 2 rounds, so we're going to do 3 total rounds with this new stitch pattern, is simply knit 1, purl 1. So we're knitting our knit and we're purling the purl. Now just do that for the next 3 rounds. Now once we finish up those final 3 rounds, our work looks something like this. It measures just a little bit more than 9 inches from here to our cast on edge. We're finished knitting now at this point. We need to gather ourselves a nice long tail. I always go a little bit too overboard with this and get more yarn than I need, but we need our tail to be able to wrap around the crown, and we're also going to use it to secure it. So cut yourself a nice long tail and grab your darning needle. And you can also remove your stitch marker. We won't use that anymore. So I like to keep this one here in the front, keep it out of the way, and then work the stitch onto my darning needle or onto this scrap piece of yarn and pull. So the scrap yarn is holding the stitches so you won't come unraveled, and we just need to do this for every single stitch around the crown. Now once you have all of your stitches off of your needle and onto your tail here, then we can pull on this tail and fasten up the crown. You do want to be careful when you're pulling this and that your yarn didn't come unplied. If it did, then it's going to be weak. So what I like to do is just take it and give it a twist. That way it's secure. I know it's not going to break when I pull this. And then we'll work around the hole here. There's just a little bit of a gap. So I'll just run the darning needle under and around that circle to help close things up. And once you have that opening closed, then take your darning needle, run it in to the middle, and then we'll do a little bit more fastening underneath. You'll want to work this around as much as you can so we know it's nice and secure. And I always like to throw in a couple of knots. So when you get a loop, take your yarn, your darning needle, and run it through the loop. And that'll help to knot things as well. I'll do that a few times just to make sure it's not going to come undone. Then we can trim that. Now the last thing we need to do is weave in the ends along the inside of the hat. And I like to do that by working it up a row. So this is going to stretch this way, right? So we don't want to weave it in on the horizontal. If we do, it could possibly work its way out. So I like to weave it in a vertical for hats, and I really just pick a knit row and work around this stitch. So I'll kind of swing it around each leg, just sort of working my way up. Do that for a few stitches and pull through, and just keep going as long as your tail will let you. Then I'll flip it around and work up the other side. Now just repeat that for all of your ends and your hat will be done. For the written instructions and the supplies list, please head over to bhooked.com/WUA2019. Thank you so much for participating in the 2019 Crochet Challenge for Warm Up America.